They warned her not to go near the crying baby by the roadside, but Mama Ngozi didn't listen. That night, she carried home more than just a child, she carried a forgotten past. A story of an abandoned baby. In every shadow, there's a story waiting to be told. Welcome to Dark Moon Folktales, where African legends, dark secrets, and village myths come to life. In a small village, there was a middle-aged widow named Ngozi. She was a 55-year-old woman who had lost her husband just a few weeks after their 20th marriage anniversary. Since then, she had lived a very quiet life, managing her poultry business with so much dedication. She never had any child of her own, but even with that, she had lived lovingly and peacefully with her late husband. He never for once nagged or questioned her inability to have a child. After her husband's death, she was sent back to her parents' house by her in-laws since she didn't bear any child for their son. One lonely night, a feeble voice cried by the roadside. People looked and passed by, scared to go close to it. But when Mama Ngozi returned from delivering some chickens people ordered from her, she heard the voice and went closer. It was a tiny baby, not more than 3 months old. People stared at her and warned her not to pick up the baby, saying it could be a trap. But she ignored them and picked up the baby. She took the baby to her humble home. It was a baby boy, tiny, cute-looking. Her joy brightened, as she had never heard the cry of a baby in her home before. She named him Chidera, nursed him lovingly, and made sure he didn't lack anything that she could provide from her little savings generated from her poultry business. One morning, as she was applying oil to the baby's body, she saw a small birthmark on his palm, similar to hers. She paused, looked at it closely, and then looked at hers. Shocked, but she smiled and said, "This is really a huge coincidence." She loved him like her own. She never missed celebrating any of his birthdays in her own little way. Her neighbors were happy that she was now happy because they had watched her live a very quiet and lonely life. When he turned 2 years old, she enrolled him in school. He was very bright and sharp, and would always come home reciting the rhymes he learned in school. When he turned 4 years old, as usual, she planned to celebrate his birthday. On the morning of his birthday, she searched her drawer to find candles and decorative items to decorate the house. Then she stumbled on her late mum's old dusty purse. She smiled and picked it up, opened it, and saw some old items in it alongside a folded paper. Curious, she opened it and realized it was a discharge form from a local clinic that had her name written on it. The details said she gave birth to a son when she was 16 years old. The boy lived. She was confused. The boy lived. How? 39 years ago, when she was 16, she had an affair with someone she loved back then and got pregnant. When her parents found out, they were so angry and ashamed of the whole situation that they said she was bringing shame to them. They locked her up throughout the duration of the pregnancy, cared for her, but never allowed her to step out to avoid more shame. On the day of the delivery, she gave birth to a boy but was told she lost the baby. Meanwhile, her parents gave the baby to the midwife to give out for adoption in order to erase the shame. So when she saw the clinic document stating the boy lived, she was shocked. She controlled herself and celebrated Chidera on his birthday, not letting him notice anything. Later that evening, she went to the clinic to visit the midwife whose name was written in the hospital's discharge document. She was told the woman had retired. She went to her house address as given to her at the clinic. Luckily for her, she met the midwife at home. She showed her the discharge document and said, "I'm the girl you delivered her child 39 years ago. I was told I lost him, but the paper says he lived. Please, I need an explanation." The midwife sighed and told her everything. "Your parents wanted to hide the shame you brought to them and lied that you lost your baby. But he lived. I took him to an orphanage down the road. I can take you there." Mama Ngozi had mixed feelings, shock, pain, betrayal, and hope. Without hesitation, she said, "Please take me there." Together with the midwife, they went to the orphanage home and met the old matron who was on duty the day Ikenna was brought there. The midwife narrated everything to her, and the matron said, "I remember. But sadly, there is bad news." Mama Ngozi's heart skipped. Ikenna was adopted 39 years ago by a good family. I still kept in touch with the family to make sure he was being well cared for. I got the news that on his way back to work, he died in a road accident 4 years ago. Mama Ngozi sat on the floor, weak. Her hope of finding her son after 39 years was shattered. But the matron continued, he was engaged to be married to a lady who was pregnant for him. Mama Ngozi stood up. Pregnant? She asked. The matron said, yes, she gave birth 3 months after Ikena's death. The child should be 4 years old now. I know the lady because Ikena introduced her to me a few years back. He always visited the orphanage from time to time. Mama Ngozi, the midwife, and the matron went to Oluchi's house. When they met her, she was shocked to see the matron. How are you, my dear? The matron asked. With fear and a sad face, Oluchi replied, I'm fine, Ma. How is Ikena's son? Oluchi broke down in tears. They were all shocked. Mama Ngozi, scared that she would hear another bad news, began crying as well. Oluchi kept crying and saying, I regret everything. I'm so sorry. They were confused. What's the problem? Talk to us. She responded, when Ikena died, I was scared of how to raise our son alone. I was only 19, had no parents, and no job. Ikena was my only source of survival. So I dropped the baby by the roadside and left him there. The matron was disappointed. Why didn't you contact me or bring him back to the orphanage? We would have taken care of him. I went back there 2 days after I dropped him and realized he was no longer there. I don't know if someone picked him up or what happened to him. Mama Ngozi stopped crying and asked, where exactly did you drop him? She described the place. Mama Ngozi was shocked. It was the same place she picked up Chidera. Is there any distinctive mark on the baby? How did he look? Mama Ngozi asked. Yes, Oluchi said. He had a mark on his palm, just like his dad Ikena. Mama Ngozi showed Oluchi her palm and asked, just like this? Oluchi said, yes. Mama Ngozi cried and said, so I've been taking care of my own grandson, unknown to me. They all looked at her in shock. He's with me. I was the one that picked him up that night 4 years ago. He's at home right now. They all marched to Mama Ngozi's house to meet Chidera, amazed at how fate still sent back her blood to her. Mama Ngozi held Chidera tight and said, I knew there was something special about you. You're not just my son but also my grandson. I will love you till my last breath. Life has a mysterious way of bringing back what is yours. Love, kindness, and patience always find their reward even when the truth is delayed by years. Fate never loses its way.
Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and share.